On the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel here, and I'm excited to have with me yet another inspiring guest today. And this is the guest whom I have known for a lot many years now. He did not know me, but I have followed him and his work for a lot many years. But we have known each other for a year now. And yeah, we got introduced a year before. And before I introduce him to you all, I would request you all to subscribe to this channel first. I will just give you 3 seconds to do that. 1, 2, and 3. And the reason I ask you to subscribe is all the inspiration and positivity that we hear from our guests, it needs to be spread to more people. And I too get motivated when more people subscribe, to keep going and keep inviting inspirational guests on my show. All right, so with that, let me introduce our guest today, and it's going to be a long introduction. Bear with me, but that's because of what all he has achieved in a short span of life. So the guest today is none other than Sunil Robert Vuppula. He's an accomplished global executive with a career spanning 25 years across India, Europe, North America, having worked in reputed companies like Eureka Forbes, Acer, Oracle, TCS. He started his career in the late 80s in engineering sales and moved to advertising and finally settled in corporate communications and has won global accolades for his ability to build brands. He's the only Indian to ever have won a Stevie Award, which is touted as the Oscars in business world for communication. And we are going to ask this specifically to explain what it is and how did he earn that award. He was also listed in the Outstanding 50 Asian Americans in Business in 2009. His mission is to change the world through his communication skills. And boy, does he do that well. His TEDx talk, Rebound When Adversity Knocks You Down, has over 441,000 views. I got to, even though I knew him, I got to watch that video only recently, and I was spellbounded. In addition to being a writer, he's also a motivational speaker and leadership coach. He has delivered training programs to engineers and executives working in Fortune 500 corporations, Fortune 50, sorry, like Target, Apple, Wall Street, Home Depot, Bank of America, and other leading firms. He's an avid marathon runner. He ran the top 3 marathons in the world and offers his own experience in transforming his audience through that. He's a contributor to many publications, and his notable writing was to Encyclopedia Britannica and India series. His debut work, A Rags to Riches memoir, this is his book, I Will Survive, was launched in 2010. It was a bestseller endorsed by global leaders like Ratan Tata, Ramadorai, and Joseph Kennedy. Here's what Ratan Tata had to say about his book. This book will serve as an inspiration to young people everywhere seeking to achieve something in their lives. And the ex-CEO of TCS, S. Ramadorai, said this: Sunil's life story is heartwarming. His style is conversational, and he shares his personal struggles and triumphs with candor. It is hard not to get inspired by such real-life values, and valor. I gladly commend this effort to reach the youth of India. His second book, Bound to Rise, has just been launched in India and has recommendations from leaders like Anand Mahindra and Chandrasekharan and Balachandran, Dr. Balachandran. Here's what Anand Mahindra, chairman of Mahindra Group, says about his book. Bound to Rise is an excellent read for young individuals entering today's highly competitive corporate landscape. The book's core message is one close to my heart about helping individuals realize their true potential, thereby enabling them to rise heights. He was recently selected by iCongo for the Rex Karambir Global Fellowship Award for his effort to inspire India's youth and is listed among the outstanding 50 Asian Americans in business. Sunil does voluntary teaching sessions at the East Jersey Prison, a maximum security prison in New Jersey, USA. These sessions are held as part of a US Justice Department initiative to organize life-transforming programs that can potentially enable prisoners to stay on the straight and narrow path after they are released. His passion for inspiring young people has led him to create a course on teendemi.com, and he also provides leadership lessons on advisor.com. He's an active Toastmasters and volunteers his time at, as I said, at East Journey State Prison Cell. He studied digital marketing from MIT and youth culture from Princeton Theological Seminary. He currently lives with his wife and sons in New Jersey, and you can find more about his work on the website sunilrobert.com. Just a second, Sunil. I need to get you on the screen. Or are you? You are already on the screen. Okay. I'm sorry about that. I wanted to introduce with a flourish, but since you're already on the screen, welcome to my channel, Sunil. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Ravi. Like you said, we've been following each other's work for a long time. But I just want to wish all the viewers a warm greetings, good morning, good evening, whichever part of the world you're dialing into. Just so humbled that Ravi, a young and up and coming leader like you, has invited me to come to be a part of your channel and your space to share a little bit. I'm very honored, and thank you for all the work you're doing in nudging people to find purpose, nudging people to set goals. I know goal setting is a big area for you. So I'm glad to be here to share my little story in whatever shape or form, what I've achieved. To me, the bio is long, and you actually literally bored your audience with my long list of achievements. But the flip side is those achievements are not what define me. There is a sense of purpose behind that, and I want to talk to you today about that.
Excellent. As the sense of purpose is something that I'm really, really eager to know about. Also, what I'm deeply fascinated about your story is the story of human transformation, life transformation. And that has been my biggest learning from your life, because you are an epitome and a model for anyone who might be finding themselves in a rut in their younger years, and they might not have any vision, so to say, of a future. But learning from your story, no matter what kind of a rut they are in, they could reimagine a glorious future. And that is exactly why I wanted to have you on this show. And thanks for gracing us with your presence. Let's begin by the mission that I came to know about your life. And you say that your mission is to change the world through communication skills. So tell us, how did you arrive at that mission, and why is that mission so important to you?
Thank you. Many people discover their life through a very evolutionary process, or an accidental process where some defining event happens, and then they chance and say. So, for example, many people might use this pandemic to discover what their life's calling is, and say, in the last 90 days, 100 days, when all of us as a communities of global family went into a lockdown, we were forced to ask tough questions, and so they start asking. My quest for a purpose, my quest for my own mission came actually during my younger years, when my family was thrown into a spiral of poverty because my dad had lost his job and so on. So some of that I capture in my TED talk as well. But in the middle of that adversity, I discovered that life is too short to be either moaning and complaining and becoming bitter about things that happen to you. You can either become a victim, or you can overcome by being and become a victor. In that choice, I felt I discovered my purpose. And in fact, this famous philosopher Viktor Frankl says that in the last, when everything was taken away from him during the Nazi imprisonment, what they could not take was his ability to respond to circumstances. He says, they can take anything away from me, but they cannot take away my dignity. I still hold the ability to make the choice of how I will react to it. It's a powerful insight that shaped me in my younger years. No matter what happened to me, I told myself that I will not let these bad circumstances define me. I will overcome. I will make a life according to my vision, my design. See, many of us have very almost like cliched opinions about words like vision, mission, and purpose. They are big words sometimes, or cliched words, depending on how you see it. But to me, in that middle of that difficult grind against poverty, I found my purpose, and I said, I will not just pick up any job that I could get on. I will take it because at that time I needed to support my family. But gradually, I will go to a design where I find a job that will fulfill my dreams, desires, aspirations, skills, capabilities, beliefs, attitudes. When all these come together, in fact, the Japanese word for that is ikigai, the confluence where your calling, your desires, your opportunities, and your dreams and aspirations come together. And that's that sweet spot called purpose, ikigai, the reason for your existence. The raison d'etre, the French word phrase, is the central reason for your existence. So to me, my raison d'etre is to harness whatever happened in my life and benefit and purpose it for the benefit of others.
So, I mean, you are one of the lucky ones to have come up with your ikigai, and I have followed ikigai for some time. I consider anybody who has found their ikigai as I'm getting some background noise. Yeah, I do not know if it is from my end or it is from your end, Sunil, but there is some background noise which is affecting. All right, it's gone. So as I said, there is a lot of I'm very envious of people who have found their ikigai. What was your process to find your ikigai?
So the trigger, like I said, was in the middle of that. But essentially, I always had a, a, a natural propensity or a natural impulse or an inclination that drives children. In my younger days, I couldn't stay focused in a classroom for 45 minutes in my elementary school or in my middle school. Every period, I would just request the teacher for permission to go to the bathroom, just because I couldn't stay for 45 minutes. Meaning, if ever a task required a sustained period of attention, I could not. Much later, the world has discovered it as attention disorder and so on. But my inability to pay attention to boring tasks was something that was very evident right in my childhood. So when I went into college and I had to study electronics and communications engineering in a polytechnic course, I had to do that because that's the only course my parents felt I will help me get a job. That will help me get a job, but my heart was not in it. So I hated that course. I fell into bad company. I wasted a few years of my life doing things that I'm not super proud of. I lost my purpose, so to speak, around those years. But the moment I started working and I discovered my career in sales, that I was a very people oriented person, I was thriving in taking on risk taking adventures and relating to people. I discovered that somewhere my future might lie with people, with ideas, and so on. Right around that time, I said I will hate electronics for the rest of my life. It may give me the opportunity to pay the bills for a short time, but this is not going to be my long term career. So around that time, I started pursuing what I like most. For example, I'll give you a practical example as to how I pursued my natural impulses over available opportunities. During that time, I couldn't afford membership in a library, right? I had to take care of my family and so on. So I used to go to what is known as the British Council Library in Hyderabad and just go into the reference section, because that section was accessible for anybody, even though you didn't have membership. So that was available for general public. So I used to go there and devour all these thesaurus, encyclopedias, and all the material that I could reference there. And I developed a love for the English language. And therein, my ikigai started coming together. Even though I was doing engineering sales and going into industrial estates and selling all day, I realized that my heart was with toying with words, coming up with word ideas, writing articles, and enjoying reading. So I think the ability to just follow your natural impulses was the first step in establishing that ikigai. And then once people started validating that, hey, you have a love for language, you're able to write good articles and so on, then I discovered that's where my future would lie. And in retrospect, it turned out all right. I mean, when I subsequently went to the journalism university, Osmania University, to pursue journalism, even though I was not attending college, because I had a love for that subject and I was very practically invested in marketing and advertising. out of the 5 gold medals, I was able to win 4 of them for
Wow.
academic excellence. So you know that once you start putting your passion and the purpose together, magic happens.
Excellent. That is quite inspiring. But as I said, I wanted to bring the contrast in your life. So I want you to share. For some reason, I still get the. I hope the recording is not getting spoiled because of this. Um, let me just check. Yeah, it's gone. Yes, I wanted to bring talk about your childhood. So, why don't you share with us how your upbringing was, what your childhood was like, and we can then take it from there.
Yeah. So my parents were from a small village, 50, 60 kilometers from Hyderabad. And their idea of a big city immigrant dream was go to Hyderabad, give the children education, English medium education or convent school education, as they called it, and set them up on a path for some modicum of success. And those days, success was either get a government job or get into a private sector and have a decent livelihood. So to them, that was the notion of success. So my mom and dad, first time immigrants to the big city, came, and my dad got a job in an international organization that paid him reasonably well by those standards, right? Not a very highly educated man, had a skilled hands with automobiles, and suddenly he lost his job. And in a big city with 4 children, no home to live, our bottom, the bottom of our barrel fell apart, and my family was thrown into a spiral of poverty, nowhere to go, no place to live, nothing to eat, nothing to wear. Even it was a very difficult set of years during those early days. But my
How
mom
old were
could
you?
not give.
How old were you?
I was 10 when this first started happening. I was 10, and my youngest sibling was 4.
Got it.
So for the next 8 years, from the time I was 10, which I was fifth grade or sixth grade, to the time I finished Polytechnic, about 8 years was real hell, because living in poverty, after you experienced a certain degree of material comfort, is a very painful thing. To be born into poverty is one thing. You don't know any better. You didn't have any frames of reference of a good life. But having a set of decent life for the first few years, and I was the oldest, and I was processing all these negative emotions of anger, rage, bitterness, helplessness, despair, and directing it against my father was a very difficult teenage years for me, because as it is, teenage years are very turbulent for a young person, but to grapple with the prospect of all these challenges was even more difficult. So somehow I supported my mother. I was very bitter, and my life really turned for the worse. Like I was telling you, during my Polytechnic years, I hated that course, and I fell into bad company. I ran into student elections and student politics, got involved with gangs, got involved with the police a few times, a couple of times. I mean, some stuff that I'm not proud of today. I'm embarrassed. We ended up doing, but those were those rock bottom years. And in the middle of that despair and dark thing, my turnaround and my transformation happened at a youth camp. And in that youth camp, I decided that if ever I get a second chance, and I really prayed that day, that God give me a second chance and I'll turn my life around. It was in that at the age of 18, in that youth camp, a friend really forced me to go to that youth camp, and there I found my purpose and a calling that God has put me in those dark circumstances for a purpose that will benefit many more beyond my immediate family. So much later, every opportunity I got, even if I was still in India, I did not become the global executive that I became later. Even during those up and coming years, I used every opportunity to go and talk to college kids, high school kids, and share with them my story.
Yeah. So what I'm fascinated is, even though you decided to turn it around, it was not just for a modicum of success. It was not just for to just get a job,
I
okay,
lost
and
you for
turn
a
it
minute.
around and live a decent life. It was actually you became way too
I can't hear you.
hungry for success. I'm, are you not able to hear me?
I can't hear you, Ravi.
You can't. I'm sorry. We are running into issues today. Is that? Are you, Robert? You're gone. Okay, I'm just asking my audience, whoever is live, are they able to hear me? Maybe you can write in your comments, and then I will know if you're able to hear me. Okay. If you can type in the comments, then I would know if you are able to hear me. Let me ask you guys. But if you are not able to hear me, how would you answer this? So we are in technical glitches for some reason. Hi, are you able to hear me? Okay. Let me call Robert. I think we lost Robert. Robert is calling me back. Call ended. Let's talk to Robert. So this is
Ravi, I'm not able to in Ravi.
You're not able to get in.
Yeah, it's saying you're as a guest, the administrator will let you come in, is what it's saying.
Okay. Let me share with you again. Copy clipboard. You are on Messenger.
No, no, I'm now let now.
No, try that again. Sorry, everybody. Technical glitches, but it's fun. Robert is back. Robert, are you able to hear me now?
Yes. Can you
Excellent.
hear me?
Yes, I can hear you as well. All right. So the sorry and apologies for the disturbance and for the technical glitch. Everything is back, and thank you everybody. Vatsala, Dominic, R.R. Mohanty, and all of them said that they are able to hear me very clear, loud and clear. All right, coming back, as I said, you were talking about your transformation, and you went to this specific youth camp. Could you tell us a bit about that youth camp? And why I'm asking these specifics is it's very important to zero down and pinpoint that specific thing, that actually transformed you. And people who are listening to us could also derive from there. What exactly happened in this youth camp? Was it somebody that you listened to? Did somebody give you personal attention? Did you get some care and love from somebody that made you change? What happened in that youth camp?
My belief is two, three things came together, Ravi. One of the first thing is when you are a young person and you're indulging in violence, indulging in destroying things, breaking the glass mirrors of a bus, and uh, engaging in student politics and stuff. You're actually looking for attention. You're looking for love. You're looking for validation of who you are as a person. And in that youth camp, I met a different type of set of boys and girls. Um, they were all like highly motivated boys and girls. They were a different group of boys and girls that than the ones that I was used to hanging out in the polytechnic era. I'm not judging anyone, but the kind of group that I was hanging around in the polytechnic were very destructive, and they had no purpose, and they were like looking to just spend 3 4 years in that polytechnic and just seem like they were a bunch of lost individuals just like me.
Got it.
In that camp, I saw these boys and girls who were like crazy about language. They were crazy about music. They were crazy about literature. They were having all these quizzes. They were involved in, and I said, "Boy, these boys and girls seem to have a lot of fun in a clean way without pulling down each other." So that was the first thing that attracted me to that. It was like a youth organization camp.
Right.
The second thing that really, and in fact, that to me was the transformation point was the story that every young person can have a turnaround really appealed to me. One of the speakers actually talked about how your lives can be turned around even if you're in the middle of a rock bottom situation. To me, that was it was like I went to that speaker only came to address me and my needs, right? I was right there at rock bottom in all that negative stuff that I mentioned earlier. And the speaker said, you have second chances. It's never too late. You can turn it around. That day, I really said, I really need the second chance because I'm seeing all these boys and girls who seem to have a lot of fun without doing any of the destructive stuff that I was doing. So those two things that really inspired. And of course, they spent a lot of time on scriptures and they said, this success is all temporary, but finding a purpose of your life is very important. And the raison d'etre, the ikigai, at that time, I didn't know it was ikigai, but that struggle to find who I was really came together. And some of my own restlessness in my heart, loneliness of my heart, really was addressed in that camp. Just the whole world is talking about the suicide that happened in India of this very up and coming hero Sushant Singh Rajput. Those days, as a young person, I had two incidents where I was this close to committing suicide, and in the middle of that negative rock bottom despairing situations, this purpose that you can turn around your life was like a lifeline thrown at me, and I grabbed it with both my hands.
So tell us about that suicide because it's very relevant for the current times. Also, you walked down to the railway tracks to end your life.
Right.
And what was the reason for a young boy of 15? How old were you then?
16. I
16.
was 16.
What could bring a young boy of 16 to take such a drastic step? And what happened after that?
A life of hopelessness, Ravi. My life didn't seem to have any purpose. It was struggles all the way. Everybody was picking on me for the torn clothes I was wearing. We didn't have food to eat, and our family was falling apart because there was no resources. My mom didn't know how to negotiate the relationship with my father. I was very rebellious, and I was doing my own nonsense at college, and I was restless. Lot of things were going around, and then I had a broken relationship to top it all at that time with a beautiful girl that I was so madly in love with. uh, all these things came together, and I just did not see the point of living, and I just wanted to end it because you know what, to live you need many reasons to keep moving on, but to die you just need one reason, that cry of anguish. And which is why years later, when I became slightly stronger in my purpose, I went and volunteered at an organization called Sahaya. And people in the 90s will know that this organization existed in Hyderabad. And Sahaya's whole purpose was to offer help and succor to people who are depressed and are on the threshold of committing suicide. And if there's anyone who understands what it means to be at rock bottom and just wanting to snap and kill yourself, it's that moment where you really hit. And oftentimes it's not because of the will to fight that gives up. It is that there is no one in this world who can relate to my struggle. That loneliness actually drives people, of course, in addition to all the depression and all the lack of purpose and the helpless feeling. And that helplessness is actually what pushes people over the edge, that you're not able to meet certain expectations. You're not getting the goals that you wanted to, that something that you so badly wanted will validate your sense of well-being could not happen. So whatever, broken dreams, broken goals, whatever happens, it just pushes you over the edge. And I'm no psychologist or a psychotherapist, but based on my own experience, that inability to navigate those rock bottom moments really determine life or death.
Right. So after that, I'm also very fascinated that you just did not want to get a decent life. You actually became hungry and you pushed your potential for massive success. Right. You had great career aspirations, and you actually turned those aspirations into reality. Then you started writing books and you started public speaking. How did that hunger come in? Was it because of the lost opportunities and the lost time, and then you wanted to now go full throttle? Where did that hunger come from later? Because
Actually,
otherwise I would imagine somebody who would come from poverty, he would settle down for a decent job and then live a life of mediocrity. But you actually doubled it down and you pushed through it, right? So tell us more about that story.
so as soon as I came across the desire to overcome, and I shared it with friends that look, I see the beauty of this youth group that I went to was nobody judged me for all the bad things that I did. They just welcomed them and said, "You got potential. God will take you places." And when somebody gives you that little word of encouragement, that really means a lot. Because all along, because I was going down the negative path, everybody said he'll become a hooligan in Mushrabad police station. His life is meant to live a life of crime. This guy is gone. He's a loser. Those were the labels that were thrown at me. But when God turned it around and I started looking at my life with a positive expectation, I said, like you said, Ravi, it was like, I have to turn around and go full throttle. But the problem was many of these people went to good colleges and so on, and I did not. Polytechnic means that you go to a government college, the kind of profile of boys and girls who go there are just to get into a decent course and get into a decent job. But like I said, I had interest with language and so on. So I joined a club called the Young Orators Club in Hyderabad. It's
Yoks.
yeah, Yorks. If you've been to Yorks or if you heard about Yorks, it's the greatest place to be on a Saturday evening. During my days, and we are talking about the era where we didn't have so many entertainment or distraction options. So on a Saturday evening, after everything is done, I was still in sales. So Saturday by 3 or 4, we would finish. And after my day job, I would go to this debating club and just be a silent listener. I could not speak as fluently as many of these guys could. I was barely able to scratch a sentence together. And as I absorbed, my ambition started getting kindled. Many of these guys went on to crack IITs, IIMs, get into write GRE, come to the United States. I started seeing what boys and girls can do with their lives. They work really hard enough and so on. But my only challenge was I was working full time and I had to support, because if I stop working, I my family will come back onto the streets. So I had to take education and professional commitments together, because if anything went wrong and I said, no, Abhi, I want to crack IIMs, I want to go and study full time. For those 2 years, my parents and my family will be back on the street. So
Right.
there was never a question of full time education for me. So I went and got a bachelor's degree in arts through Ambedkar Open University, then an MBA in Usmania, and then a journalism, a 2 year master's in journalism with, in Usmania full time while I was working, right? So that's where your ability to charm the socks of people comes in. When people said they'll throw me out for lack of attendance, I would go and tell them my, tragedy stories, as it were. And I was not faking it or fabricating it. People knew that I was very hungry to study, and they opened doors or turned a blind eye to rules and allowed me to success. So education came through, my personality development came through, and I set my sights so high that I said, I'll get back all those wasted years. I will get back my second chances, and I'll grab them with both opportunities. So, for example, I barely had time to sleep those days. For example, I used to do a day job. Then I used to work as in All India Radio as a radio jockey. I would do freelance writing for Deccan Chronicle, Economic Times, and a few newspapers. I mean, if there was anything that I could do, I would do it. Like I just unleashed a fury of energy in the second phase, Ravi.
No, I feel so. I feel blessed to have this conversation because there's so many lessons to be learned here. As somebody who had so many disadvantages to his life, and still the story here and the lesson for everybody is you can turn it around, even if you do not have an Ivy League education or a college. Many people take that as an excuse for not getting all that they want in their lives, because they would give up saying that, oh, sorry, I do not have the Ivy League education, or I did not have the good education. um, the transformation in your personality, where you are regarded as a great public speaker today, inspiring audience not just in India but all over the world. Your TEDx talk is full of lessons on how to deliver an impactful speech, and that too with humor. Okay, and it's very, very difficult to engage somebody for 20 minutes, a message that is so solid, and then intersperse that with humor. So all these lessons, in fact, I was so fascinated, I shared it, and I was kicking myself why I did not listen to that before. But all this happens after 18 years of wasted years, without potential, without care, without any. Because I always believe that the foundation is laid before 15 and 16, and then nothing much can happen. But you are somebody that a lot can happen if you actually set your mind into it. And that's what I wanted to go deep into it, on what your processes were.
In fact, the person who encouraged me to go for full throttle I was complaining to that person that all my friends are in engineering already. I don't have an engineering degree. All my friends are going towards studying in the US. I don't have anything. I'm stuck with this boring job. I was basically complaining. So he said, by the time these guys graduate and start working, you would have got a 4 or 5 year head start over them. Don't take it as a disadvantage, take it as an advantage. And then truly it came around. Because even though I started early and I did not have the benefit of education, as soon as I got education, the world started recognizing that education is only a door opener. It's a basic minimum qualifier to filter me out. But it was the practical experiences that I brought and the many skills that I acquired in the meantime that really set me up. So not that I'm bragging, but God has really blessed all that effort. Because you know what, when you're sincere and you want to make a difference to your company, to your brand, to the product that you're selling, to your heart is in the right place, success is an inevitable outcome.
Right.
That was a lesson for me. And today, I don't. At that time, I was very bitter and resentful. But today, I'm actually grateful because it is these experiences that set me up. And the very friends who really were racing ahead and looked down upon me today now look back and say, Sunil, we didn't even know that you were grappling with some of these issues. So you can turn your adversity into an advantage.
Right. So from sales, you moved into communication, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
where was this? Which organization was that?
This was all in Hyderabad. I started first with an agency called A&M Advertising.
Right.
And then later I went to a very big agency called Ma Communications Bozell, which was among the top agencies in Hyderabad.
Right.
And I worked on some very big names. Like those days, there was a big bank and there was a steel plant, Vizag steel plant,
Right.
some government accounts and so on. I really enjoyed my advertising days. But my big break came when Acer in India started their operations with laptop servers and desktops, and they were looking to hire their first country marketing director. And I mean, they could have hired people from Delhi, Bombay, or Bangalore, but they picked a guy from Hyderabad to move to Bangalore. So that was my first big breakthrough, really, Acer India.
Right. And when did the idea of writing a book come along in the journey?
So as soon as Acer happened, Acer India, I was their first marketing director, doing well. Every time I went back to Hyderabad, those young people that I used to know in the YMCA circles and that youth organization circles, they would call me and say, "Bhai, can you come and talk to our young people? Can you come and address our youth gathering? Share with us your life story and so on." And I really enjoyed that because you were once a bad boy, and now your life is turned around. It makes for great stories, right?
Right.
And even today, when I tell some of these stories to my teenager or my 8-year-old boy, my boys are very fascinated and say, "Wow, Dad, how did you break those rules?" I mean, there is you don't want to encourage anybody to do bad stuff, but there is a strong lesson that you can offer because you've been there, done it, turned it around, and so your life is an inspiring story. So that sowed the seed for me go and share my stories with others. And particularly, as soon as I went to UK for as part of my job later, which became Oracle, that really set me because my dream from where I started, people said, "Ye to criminal banega. He'll be a hooligan in Mashrabad police station." From there to become an immigrant executive in UK was really a long journey ahead, right?
Right.
So as soon as I went to London, the seed became very strong, saying, "I've arrived to some degree of success from where I started. It's time for me to give back and start sharing my story." It was then I started thinking about a book.
Right. And but how did you get these recommendations from all these big stalwarts? How did that happen?
It's a great question. I had no idea. I had no connection to Ratan Tata's office or any of these guys. At that time, I was still working in Oracle. I
Hmm.
put the book together. My wife Vuppula was a big inspiration in encouraging me to write this book because she said we only go to India during August every year, or maybe during December. You should have a channel or a tool that will work when you are not in India. So, and her encouragement was just write it, tell the good, bad, and the ugly. People love your story, and she's one of those who really, they say, right, wives are your best critics, right? So
Right.
she would look at her background is also English literature, so she looked at it and said, "This is where you should cut it. This is where you should build on," and gave some ruthless feedback. And then it started. And as I started sharing that I had written a book, and you know how the universe comes together to help, or in this case, God's favor was there. The very first person I shared the book, and I said, "I need your editing help. I'm willing to pay you." He said, "No, you don't need to pay me. This is such a powerful story. I'll give it to somebody who might actually publish it. And because if I do it for you, you'll have to pay me. But if I give it to a publisher, they'll do it for free and you'll even make money out of it." I said, "Wow, this is great. Let's do this." The very first person who read my book felt the potential to get it published. And as soon as they said yes, we started hunting for endorsements. And somebody I knew who knew somebody in Ratan Tata's office sent it to them. And I still remember the day the email came from Ratan Tata's office. I fell off the sofa. They said, "Mr. Tata is happy to endorse your book. This is a great book. If this is quote is acceptable to you, let us know. Or if you want something specific, we can modify it." I said, "No, no, no, thank you. Before you change your mind, I'll take this."
No, sometimes I do not want to pass it away that it was mere chance, because I remember somebody asked Rajesh Sethi also, how did he get the foreword of his book written by Tom Peters? Okay, Tom Peters was the greatest management guru at that time, and he shared his story of hustle. How did he spend 1 year trying to build influence on people who were around Tom Peters? Okay. And then after a year of hustling and bringing them into his confidence, they pushed the book to his table, and then Tom Peters read it and signed off. So when you say it was easy, I'm sure it wasn't easy. You had your own part of hustle to play, and then
Yeah.
it went to Ratan Tata.
You're absolutely right. Unless people believe that your effort is worth their weight being put behind them,
Right.
they will not do it. So people saw that. I mean, I came to America. I could have easily become, the typical immigrant, just focused on their career, building their own business. But there was this desire to make a difference back in India, where my heart is, and people are willing to. And just like our conversation today, right? The whole conversation is how can we add value to others through our stories, through our achievements, through our experiences, right? So. I mean, on the Saturday morning, I could be easily sleeping or watching. You could be doing million other things, but the fact is, you want to make a difference to others. You want to help others, and that's where people put their weight behind.
That's amazing. And then, did you immediately write your second book, or was it much later?
Yeah. So the first book was all my story, as and very well received. I never get tired of telling the story. There was a boy from Kashmir, Srinagar, who wrote to me and said, "Sir, I read your book. I was very inspired. At the time of reading this book, even I was having very suicidal thoughts, and I'm planning to run away from my house because I don't get along with my parents." I think his he related to the struggles that I had with my father. And I immediately reached out to that boy and I counseled him and I spent some time and I said, hang in there, finish your graduation, then you can go to Delhi or wherever your heart is calling. But work along with your parents. So, in that sense, I was able to rebuild his relationship with his parents. So, after that, many people said this is a great personal story, but we need some more practical insights on how we can survive. So at that time, I also took to running, and I fascinated by marathons. And I use that idea and a metaphor of a marathon in our corporate journey or in your business journey. We never should think of our jobs as if it's a sprint. This year, I really want to do well and all your effort like a sprint. And if your goals don't get met, you'll be frustrated, right? I
Right.
want most people to think of their professional journey as a marathon that has multiple phases, multiple journeys, multiple miles, multiple milestones. So, using that as a metaphor, I built an entire book on called "Bound to Rise," meaning you are bound by your limiting beliefs. If you unshackle those beliefs, you are bound to rise. And that book really, which is what Anand Mahindra, some of these leaders endorse, because many people just get into the corporate world without any training. Some, if you're lucky, you go to a business school, but you really people get into jobs and they're getting the first 2 3 years of their professional journey. They're very frustrated. So this book was meant for young people who are entering the workforce and professional journeys.
Got it. So tell us a bit about your marathon journey. How did you get to marathon? And then I think you also suffered another adversity where you injured your leg or something, isn't it? Do
There
you
was
want
an
to share that
accident.
story?
There was a bike accident. Yeah, it was a bike accident, and a 7-inch piece on my right knee was surgically removed because the bone broke and moved away from the joint, so they couldn't even repair it, or I think so they had to remove it. And the doctor said, because a significant piece of your knee is now removed, your load bearing capacity on the leg is now down to 20 or 25%. And forget sports. If you're able to walk without a limp, you'll be lucky. You'll be using a cane for a long, long time. That was the prognosis, and it really depressed me because at that time I had a lot of hair and I was a reasonably good-looking lad. But this depression that caused by that 1 year of being bedridden, recovering with walkers, that really threw me off my um, career journey. Just when things were looking up, I was hit by another episode of adversity. So, really, I was in a very bad phase mentally, physically, and so on. And even after I recovered, I never got back to my physically good shape much long before I grew out of shape. I gained weight, and I was not happy with who I was. And add to it the corporate journey, and I moved from Bombay to London and London to USA. The eating lifestyles and everything changed, and I really gained a lot of weight. My compounded annual growth rate was about 10% every year. So at that time, and cut a long story short, I had two defining experiences, so to speak. One was in the form of a writer who was 76 years old. His name is Cecil Murphy, an American writer who wrote about 90 books. Phenomenal writer. His one of his all-time successful book was 90 Minutes in Heaven. He wrote about a guy who dies and goes to heaven, and that book became a New York Times bestseller for 2 3 years. Long story short, that guy came visited me in my house because we had met him in Hyderabad. Prafula and I know him. We have a personal connection with him. He came visited me and he looked at my lifestyle and he said, "When you die, can you add me as one of the pallbearers who will carry the coffin for you?" And at that time, I was like in my early 40s, and I was shocked. A 76-year-old guy telling me, who was in my early 40s, saying, "When you die, I want to be one of the pallbearers." And the reason he said that with such provocation was even at 76, he was still running 4 or 5 miles a day. And he said, "You better," in other words, he was sending me a message that you better get your life together, better get active and stop being a victim and get on with your life. That was episode one. The second episode was actually through my company CEO, N. Chandrasekharan. He's an avid marathoner. At that time, my company was 4 billion as a revenue, and he was running a $4 billion corporation and still had the time to run marathons. And when I met him, he had actually run the New York City Marathon, and the next day he met us. New York Marathon happens on the weekend. The next day he met us, and he was like as fresh as a daisy. And
Right.
everybody asked him, how do you manage a marathon yesterday and you come in and today you're talking to all of us? He said, if you are not able to run your life, you'll not be able to run the organization well. And take control of your health, otherwise you can't take control of your operations or your professional responsibility. Those two incidents really kindled in me a desire to turn my life around. I mean, I said, even if I don't run or anything, I'll at least get energetic and physically better. And I started. The first time I ran, I couldn't even run 100 yards.
But
Uh,
were you running marathons before the accident?
no,
No.
like
Okay.
every Indian young boy, I was crazy about cricket and I was diving catches and slip catches, left arm spin. Some of that I was doing, but nothing that would qualify me as a sports person or an athlete.
So this is again quite a lesson. So if you hadn't met through that accident, gone through that accident, you'd not have picked marathon.
At all. Yeah. I used to think marathon is the most boring sport in the world.
Same here. I also feel that.
What is there? I mean, there's no points. There's no. it's
So,
it's
so the way I see this is every adversity is an opportunity for you to uh, to grow further. Which otherwise, all these adversities that happen to your life, it should be gift for you, isn't it? Because of those adversities, you became what you became today, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying I don't want any more adversity to anybody, but if something should befall me, and that's the essence of the TED talk that I shared, that you never know how what life dishes to you, but if something should come about, you should have a plan, you should have the fortitude, you should be prepared to turn it around and take your advantage because it happens. The pandemic happened, right? I mean, the world was thinking we are at the most advanced and the scientific phase in the civilization itself, and then the pandemic happens and tells us that we are not as strong as we think we are, and stuff happens, and there are things that are beyond our control. So yes, it seems like that, Ravi, that whatever adversity was thrown at me, God allowed me to overcome. If I say I did it all by my strength, I would be lying. But my faith, my family, a dear supporting spouse, friends who mean the world to me. And Rajesh and I go back a long way. Many of these friends that are very, very influential in my life. I write about it in this book. There are so many people I talk about as who kept influencing me because if I didn't have education, it was because of these friends who invested in me. So even during the marathon situation, my company provided me the motivation, because the company is the sponsor of the New York City Marathon. And once I took to it, I began to inspire so many others. My wife, who had rheumatoid arthritis, she ran a half marathon. My two boys, my teenagers, don't care about marathons, but I was able to, influence my teenager to run two half marathons. I mean, if they stick with it, it's great. If they don't, at least I've done my part to influence people. But really, when adversity happens, the greatest thing would be go and take advantage of it. You shouldn't wish for it, but if should that happen, you should try and turn it and harness it for maximum benefit, because you're wasting a gift that was given to you.
Right.
In fact, there's a saying, right? Everybody kept saying it during the pandemic: never let a crisis go to waste.
Right.
Right. So that's the story of my life.
Yeah, so we should not be fishing for it, but if at all a crisis hits, of course, I mean, it's very easy to say that you turn that into an opportunity. But even if you take a hit or a blow, you should bounce back and see how you can turn it around, isn't it? And then you could actually be a hero, and somebody would call you for an interview, and maybe you would be an opportunity to write books and inspire others.
In fact, I must tell you, just after I was discharged from the hospital, anybody who's been through a surgery, they know that first the stitches have to heal, and then they'll remove the plaster of Paris, and then they'll give you a fresh dressing and all that. As soon as I was discharged and I went home, within 3 days, I couldn't even get up. And there was this writers' workshop in the YMCA Secunderabad organized. And this is where I met that writer, Cecil Murphy, I mentioned to you about, right? And I knew that YMCA only organizes it once in 3 years or 4 years, and I had signed up for it long before this accident happened.
Right.
I signed up, the accident happened, and there was a choice for me. I could have just not gone to that writer's workshop, and nobody would have blamed, right? Because I had a major surgery, a big part of my 27 stitches on my leg. They could have forgiven me, but I told myself, anyway, I'll be crying and moaning in pain. I might as well go to the YMCA and sit through and listen to this. Is the era where we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have any of these tremendous opportunities that are on the fingertips today. We didn't have access to those. So when these two guys came from the United States to run a writer's workshop, I couldn't let go of that opportunity. I couldn't even wear clothes, so somebody would actually help me wear, because I was still in that huge plaster of Paris casting all over my leg, right? So, and the YMCA made special concessions to me so that I could sit in the back row in an elevated position for my feet. So they made extra concessions because I was not willing to. I couldn't even. There wasn't even a ramp. I had to climb up about 8 or 10 steps to get to the main auditorium in the YMCA. Nothing would stop me, Ravi. I was just willing to go and sit and learn these lessons from the writers who came all the way from the States to teach us how to become better writers. And that investment that day, I'm a published author. So nothing should stop you from your purpose once you define your purpose, Ravi.
Yes. But how did you get that drive? Because many people attend many workshops, they would attend some session, but to translate that into action and actually go and finish writing a book. I have tried writing books before. I've never been able to finish. Okay, so what is that thing? Is it something that you are gifted with, or is this somebody who can? I mean, anybody can have that grit or that resilience to finish, take up a big task and finish it to fruition. What is it that you have that many people do not have?
I don't know, Ravi, if there's a pat answer for this, but if you believe that you have value that you could add, you should not stop. If you think, I mean, my life is just another life, if that's your orientation, then you'll probably be falling, because motivation is a daily chore, right? Zig Ziglar says motivation is a daily require. Just like you need to bathe every day or take a bath every day.
Yeah.
You need to be motivated every day. So
Yeah.
your ability to align your life to a goal that is bigger than you determines your goals, right? For example, as you are an expert in the area of goal setting and goals, you hear multiple approaches to goal setting. But my goal setting is quite simple. My goal setting is, how can I live a life of purpose, and everything I do kind of aligns to you. Now, you might say, what does running a marathon, writing a book, or giving a TED talk, some of these loose strands, how do they come together? How do you motivate yourself? So I have a fairly simplistic view about my own life, and it's not at all a rocket science. My purpose is, since you really don't know when your finish line is in the sense of your lives, and I
Yes.
mean, who would have thought that an up and coming star like Sushant that we referenced earlier, his life would end so prematurely, right? And we lost a lot of people in the pandemic. My wife, who's a teacher in a nearby school district in New Jersey, three of her colleagues she lost during this pandemic. You would not think that she was like so sad that she will not see them next school year. So our life is fraught with uncertainty. What you are only sure of is today, and what you're only sure of is the near future. So you have to make your life count by setting goals that are compelling, motivating, driven. And I mean, once you're in that path, nothing will stop you. For example, when my wife and I went grocery shopping, I would beg her and say, I'll drive you, I'll bring you back. Not that she can't drive, but I wanted to give her the assurance that I'm there. But while I'm there, is it okay if I sit in the car and I just type away, right? So I would just make these deals with my wife. Um, um, you manage your time smart, because you have a day job as well, right? I'm not a full-time writer that makes a living out of my books. I have a day job. So how do you carve out those small windows of time to pursue your goals, right? So that's comes from knowing that these goals will make a difference to somebody, or to yourself.
Right. So I have some questions on public speaking and how it transformed your life, and what can public speaking, how can public speaking add so much value? And also, I want to ask you a question: how to get better at anything? Because your public speaking, you took it to a level where you're known to be a great public speaker, and we all know, and that's why your video also became so viral. So that is one aspect. And also, I would also like to know your story on how did you appear on TEDx, and then how do you set goals for, I mean, what are your upcoming goals for the rest of your life? So these are some of the questions, but before that, I want to take some of the questions that our live audience have posted, and bring them up on screen. So here's a question from Vatsala, and Vatsala says, has there been a time in your professional career when your knowledge of the tough ways has helped you achieve the task that you had to accomplish? The knowledge of the tough ways had actually, yeah, so maybe your adversity has helped you achieve what you want to accomplish.
Oh, this happens all the time. I'll give you a few instances, but that's a great question, Vatsala. The knowledge of your tough ways. In in the business world or in the corporate world, there are always people who come and do dadagiri over you, right? I mean, somebody, they'll say, "Oh, the chairman wants this, the CEO wants this." They'll come and, oh, name dropping happens, and they try to bully you into doing things that you're wanting to do, but not at the time that they want to do. Like, if I want to do something, let's say 3 days later, but these guys want it like today, that I have to drop everything. I think to myself, "Ye kyun dadagiri kar raha? I was such a bad boy before." Why? Right? So I just cut some slack to them, and I say, "Bacha hai, jane do." I mean, some of that worldly wisdom and that seasoning that comes, right? That happens to me all the time. And there are some people who, they talk one thing in front of the leaders and put on a show, and they try to hog credit, and they try to. Some of these I think to myself and saying, they're playing a drama again. I mean, your ability to see through people and all that, you've been there, done it, you've seen it all. And I don't play that game anymore. That knowledge of the tough ways, and professionally, the ability to pull yourself from the deepest ruts and doing stuff when you don't feel like it, the ability to just push yourself, right? I mean, these are really lessons that no business school in the world can teach you, no book can teach you. These are like learned in the hard knocks of life, right? Those are the things that I really learned in professional survival mode. And the, that no matter how tough the challenge ahead is, that I'll find a way that I जुगाड़ करके निकल जाऊंगा. Something you'll find a solution to create a solution to the problem. I'm not a quitter. I never quit. The best of my knowledge, no matter how difficult the professional situation is, I'll try to overcome. And what I learned, and this is the last thought I'll share with Vatsala, what I learned is in when you do dadagiri and when you do all this, no, you never snitch on your friend, or you never throw your friend under the bus, right? That's the school of the unwritten rules of dadagiri. You're always, even in, like, you get into police station situations and stuff, you never blame or snitch on the other. That loyalty is a deep fact. These things in professional world, there's no such thing as loyalty other than to your job and to your boss at best. Nobody's loyal to anyone other than just pursuing this thing, right?
That's
I
so
play it the
interesting.
old-fashioned way. I never throw anybody under the bus. I never complain about somebody to another, escalation and all that we do at work. It's not the right thing. And again, I might be odd, and I might be an outlier in this belief, but they're all just trying to go and think from a scarcity mindset, that if they win, I should lose. That win-lose mindset is driving them, but I can win and I can make them win too. That win-win mindset allows me to survive in this professional settings.
Nice.
That's the answer to the question.
So you mean to say there is more honor in a gangster or a mafia, that they have more honorable principles than in professional life?
I learned that in that, and I applied here. Anybody, you can validate this with anyone I worked.
Right.
And the times when I did, out of frustration, did anything, I regret now. It's not worth losing a colleague or a friend at all,
Got
no
it.
matter how big the prize is.
Right. Excellent. We have one more question from R.R. Mohanty. Mr. Mohanty has been a regular listener to all my interviews. So he says that how to identify one's passion or purpose. Sometimes we have just one out of these two. How to develop the other one? So how to bring your passion and purpose together? So that is important question. I think you said you found your ikigai, but how can others also find their ikigai?
I'll tell you this thing. One of the phrases that I learned very early is, "What makes your heart sing?" Right? What makes your heart go flutter with excitement? Right? That to me is purpose. When I go to India, Ravi, my wife and my mom, my sisters, they always say, you use our house only as a landing pad where you drop your suitcases, but we rarely get to see you except in the night, right? So when I go to India, I hang out with family, my sisters, they are very, very dear to me. All that initial, like, 1-2 days of excitement, I'm with them. But after that, I vanish, because me, the city has given me so much that every possible opportunity, I go to high schools, colleges, places, anyone where even the 20, 15 boys and girls are meeting, youth meetings that they call me, I go and share my story. And to me, that's the greatest excitement, because I could go to India, go to all these lovely cuisines. I love food, for example. I could be spending my time with friends and just having these lovely meals with friends, and nothing wrong with that. I mean, I earned it. I'm going back. But to me, more than friends, just the ability to go and give my life story away and inspire other people gives me that sense of purpose. And thankfully, my wife and my near and dear ones understand that. And so sometimes, even before the moment they know I'm coming, my sisters, my family, they are getting ready to come and say, "Come,
So I think there is again, we lost you for a bit, but you're back.
yeah."
Good. So as I
So
said,
just recap, it is that sense of purpose that drives me. And how do you find it? Just ask that question: what makes your heart sing? What are you willing to do for free? Marketing, for example, me is one profession that if I even if I was not doing this full time, I would have still pursued marketing as an activity. But fortunately, I've become a marketer by profession, and it pays my bills, and I made a living out of it, won awards and so on. But marketing makes me sing. Public speaking makes me sing. These are the things that drive me, and I'm willing to put hours and hours in preparation and in pursuit of these goals. So my passion follows my purpose.
So it was. So if I draw any conclusion or lesson from your life, you exposed yourself. So it was not like you knew public speaking is what makes you sing, but only when you went ahead and spent some time in Yorks, that's where you connected with public speaking, isn't it? So I think the idea is, if you have not found what makes you sing, you have to go and dabble with different
Multiple
activities,
things. Yeah.
multiple things, and then you will find that one thing where your heart clicks, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't think public
Actually,
speaking would have just landed on your lap, but you
true.
actually went ahead and attended those sessions.
True. In fact, one of the skills that I'm improving in the pandemic in the last 90 days is I set out to relearn a few of the languages that I used to know, go back to French because I had learned French for a little while and I had stopped. So when I learn and when I speak, some of that languages give me that excitement. So yeah, you're right, Ravi. If you try, well, because life is too short to have not explored, right? They say it about travel. People who don't travel do not read beyond the one page of a book, right? I mean, if the world has so many countries and so many places, it's like a reader who's not read beyond a page. So it's just like traveling, just like exploring your skills. And you're never to. And after I came to America, this learning addiction, if I were to, there's no negative connotation, but this learning junkie that I became was possible because of the tremendous people you meet in your travels, in your global exposure, that you meet different people with different talents, different gifts, and you say, you know what, let me try. I may not become as good as the others, but just in the process of trying, you make awkward mistakes, you grow, and then if it clicks, if it makes you sing, you pursue it.
Right. Thank you for that. That was awesome. I wanted to know. I mean, I'm also being mindful of the time here. Just quick two questions before we end this. Public speaking, how has it transformed your life, and why should people pursue public speaking?
That's a great question. I think everyone comes across a situation in life where they have to stand up and make a presentation to a small group of 4 or 5 people, or even introduce themselves to a group when they go into. Unless you want to live like a recluse, constantly being online. And there are some people like that who are total nerds. They'd much rather be communicating with the keyboard than people. And that's perfectly okay too. The world needs those tech geniuses who will invent stuff. But unless you're in that category, in fact, even some of those guys, they'll be forced to stand up and launch their product or launch their. I mean, Steve Jobs, for all the tech genius he was, stood up in front of groups and still launched his products, right? So at every stage in your life, no matter whether you're a young person or a seasoned leader, you will come into situations where you will have to stand up and speak in front of a group. So public speaking is one skill that I would say every young person or every leader should have some bit of a love for, some bit of a mastery. Uh, I would not have become the communicator that I subsequently became if it were not for that love for public speaking that got kindled. When you stand up and speak, you are using your ideas to sway the audience, and if you understand that dynamic, you can achieve magic because you know how to stand up and crack that chemistry with that audience. You know how to make your ideas go into their heads and move them to action. You know how to tell a story. You know how to work with the emotions of the audience. It's a fascinating chemistry. I could spend hours just talking about that subject because it's so dear to my heart. But I would say whether you're a techie or you're a business leader or a young person, this is one skill that you must have in your back pocket.
Excellent. And how did the TEDx talk happen? And when was that?
2 years ago, 2018 April.
Uh-huh.
It was a long on my bucket list, Ravi, that I should give a TED talk because writing a book, I had check mark. Running a marathon, I had check mark. But a TED talk took a while for me. And I kept knocking multiple doors. I applied for a few talks in India. But in India, you are competing with millions of people, right? I mean, everyone in India wants to give a TED talk. And so after repeated door knocks, finally, I got an opportunity to speak in TEDx Wilmington. I live in New Jersey. Delaware is our neighboring state. It's a 90-minute drive from where I live. I applied and I knew that my TED talk would be in the area of adversity because that's my life story, right? So when I pitched this idea of lessons to learn from adversity, those guys really liked that idea, and they said, April, we are putting together our annual TEDx. Would you like to come and speak? And whatever I thought I learned about public speaking, that entire TEDx experience was another learning curve because they take the TED template and they make you write, they make you tape, they make you go through a rehearsal. Even one day before the actual event, they do a full dress rehearsal of all the speakers. It's a very rigorous formula of preparation. And
Nice.
of course, even there I broke some rules because what I prepared and gave in the day of the dress rehearsal was so different than the actual speech because I improvised it on the fly. And the organizer said, "Your versions are changing every version. Your I said it's getting better, I presume."
Right.
But it was a fascinating experience because TED puts some real discipline. Many people think just because you talk makes you a good TED speaker. It is not true. TED puts some proper discipline, and even big speakers, big name speakers like Bill Gates and all, they have to come if they agree to give a TED talk that they will follow the TED template and use props and so on and so forth. So I used a prop in the TEDx talk, if you remember, and
Yes.
it was a
Fair and
it
lovely.
was yeah, fair and lovely, and then the medals. The
Medals.
ability to learn these nuances of public speaking were a fascinating example of my. No, I really grew a lot even during the ability to give TED talk, and many people came back and said every week I hear on either on LinkedIn or on Facebook that they heard my TED talk and it was very fascinating and inspiring and so on. Yeah.
And humor, oh my God, humor is the best thing about getting across any important message, because if there is no humor, it becomes dry and you would not register it. But with humor, I think a lot of important things can settle, because there is acceptance of the ideas the moment you have humor, isn't it? So
Sure.
that's the one thing that I also learned. So you just mentioned that it was in your bucket list, and you come across as somebody who is very ambitious in getting his life goals one after another. What is your process of pushing yourself and setting ambitious goals? Do you have an annual goals or 5-year goals? What is your process like?
Every year, December 31st, my wife and I started doing it for the last 20 years, really. 99, so 21 years actually. I've been setting goals um, for 4 or 5 areas of my life. And it's the same old Excel sheet. We just keep adding tabs to it as we keep going along. It's a joint process. Whatever I set for myself sometimes might take time away from the family. So I work with my wife and I share some of my dreams, desires, and we put them in that Excel sheet. And sometimes what happens is, for example, the TEDx talk did not happen for 2 3 years. Every year it kept appearing in the sheet, but it did not come to pass no matter how many times I applied. In fact, I would say my book publishing was a much easier task. Like I shared, I got published the first time effort than the TEDx talk because TEDx was far more competitive, and I was going with, a whole lot of achievers who were also being picked. And they only are able to pick 20 25 speakers because it's a one day event, TEDx, and they don't have multiple events unless it's a big head organization. So finally, when I was able to do it, it was knocked off. But you're right. Every year we write, and it also instills discipline and gratitude. I'm grateful that God gave me 1 year and I was able to use it well. And God willing, I'll apply myself for the next year for goals that are really inspiring. For example, March 1st, I was supposed to run a marathon in Tokyo, but because of the pandemic, it got knocked off. And God willing, next year I'll do it. So that goals constantly keep moving. If you're not able to achieve it, or for reasons beyond your control, they get cancelled and so on. So yes, I try to set ambitious goals because I would rather try and fail than not try at all, or set low goals for myself. Right. So I in fact, Jim Collins, the writer, talks in the book Great, talks about big, hairy, audacious goals.
Bug.
Those goals have to scare you. Those goals have to say, on your own, you can't do it if you don't push, prepare, train, stretch, Ravi. So I have a set of goals that propel me, and hopefully I'll leave an impact on the spheres of people that I meet in the world that I live.
Excellent. Again, inspiring, because I also believe that there is another quote which says that it's not it's not what you get after you achieve the goal, but what you become in the
Come
process of it.
in the process, what
So that is
transforms.
where the growth is, and that's why I came up with this phrase: goals driven life is actually growth driven life, because goals help you stretch and grow.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
excellent. Two more questions, and then we have some audience questions, so we will take that up. One is very fascinating. I could not let you go without asking this. In New Jersey prison, you have taken sessions for the prisoners. Could you share how did that happen? And that's quite fascinating to know.
This is actually through the Toastmasters movement that I was able to go and teach public speaking and leadership there. Again, I have a soft corner for all these people who are marginalized, who are, of course, people will argue that they are in prison because they committed a crime, or they broke a rule.
So you must be empathizing more than anyone else, isn't it?
That's why I go there. I could have been that in Karlapalli jail in Hyderabad, or if my transformation story didn't happen and God did not rescript my life, I could have been that. So I have a natural soft corner, and many of these guys who do these crimes are actually young people, Ravi. At 15, 16, 17, 18, they get into those gang situations, drugs, or any they commit, and then unfortunately they get into that situation. They're given 15, 20 years. And just imagine, by the time they come out after serving 15 years, life has turned around them. Life has changed, accelerated, and they can't adapt to life after they come out, and
Yeah.
then they commit a crime and go back because the prison becomes their comfort
Is
zone.
a safe haven for them. I see.
Correct. So the recidivism as a phenomena is costing a lot of millions of dollars from a taxpayer's standpoint, and governments all over the world are struggling to keep prisoners back in civil society
I see.
before they commit another crime. So some of the
I
skills
never
that we
knew
were
that.
hoping to give are so that they will resist that impulse to sort of go back after their time in civil society.
Got it. My last question before I take up some audience question is, if all the listeners was listening to this, if they find or come across a young boy of 18 who is lost, okay, or who may have got into wrong company, and is lost, and he does not have any aspirations, and he does not have any hope for himself, and there's no vision at all, how can we help him, an 18-year-old, and what do you do when you meet such a young person?
First of all, stop judging that person. The ones that hurt me most during my troublesome days were the ones who judged me and wrote me off. Uh, the ones that I'm even today grateful for are the ones who had kind words for me. and that assured me that things will turn around, things will get better, things will, if I put in the required work hard. So encouragement is what I, in fact, the word encouragement has courage built into it, right? When you encourage somebody, you're offering them the courage to bounce back. So that's the first part. We are, without judging, you just say kind words and encourage them and build them, and then we give them the right inspiration by sharing these kind of stories, that what, it's never too late to turn it around, never too late to for a second chance. What makes your heart sing? Discover your purpose. Identify something that they can appreciate. All the ones that encouraged me were the ones who saw potential in me and said, great potential. You've got a love for words. You've got a way with words. You have this strength in you. You seem to be a people's person. Identify and pick one thing that you're not lying or you're not making up just to encourage them,
Right.
but I'm sure there's some things that are naturally strong in that person. And once you start validating those affirmations and positive statements,
Right.
you'll open a small window for them to invest. Where
That's
people go wrong or parents go wrong is that they try to invest and try to make them change without validating and giving them that positive affirmations that we need. Human beings
that's
thrive on encouragement. I mean, I know, we are all in social media. One positive comment can just give us enough energy to survive a day, right? So
that's
always the human spirit grows on encouragement. So I would say encourage, validate strengths, and then start giving them resources to turn it around.
excellent. That's amazing. Let's take a question and then we can end this. So there's a question from Sumita, and Sumita says, "Does financial breakdown helps us to achieve our goals? Where I found many of the youngsters suffer from this crisis, and they're sometimes unable to achieve it." Okay, so yeah, financial adversity that breaks a lot of people. I think it's just a story taken from your life as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Financial breakdown is the worst form of adversity anyone can go through. I think only after health. If once health goes, everything goes. But health being the number one thing, and then second one is financial growth. Because this world, you cannot survive in this world without having some bit of financial freedom or financial comfort. So if and that breaks my heart, particularly for young people in India, because Ravi, I must tell you, when I went for a book launch in India, in Bangalore, I noticed a store where you can buy Levi's jeans on EMIs.
Wow.
Levi's jeans on EMIs.
Mm,
That's the society we are encouraging, that you can walk into any store,
right,
buy expensive clothes, and pay it on a monthly basis.
right,
That's, that is not capturing or captivity or imprisoning. I don't know what is. What people don't realize is that they go and swipe once, but every time they are swiping, actually they are getting into captivity. They are going
right,
into financial bondage.
right,
So, without getting into a lesson on financial freedom, I want to tell them there's a phrase in Jewish culture where you say a lender is a master over a person to whom he lends money. In the
right,
sense, a borrower is a slave to the lender.
right,
So if you owe money to a credit card company, that credit card company is your slave master, task master. You are the slave. And so your ability to live and design a life saying, I will not owe anyone any money, is your first step towards freedom. When
got
Praful and I got married, the last bill that was paid, I ended up using all my credit cards, maxed out my credit cards, and they were like 37 rupees or something in my account. That's the kind of pressure we come into when big events like marriages, or when you get into expensive lifestyles, designer clothes. For a season, I fell in love with designer suits. For a season, I fell in love with watches. No matter what your addiction is, never get into a situation where you are a bonded servant paying through your nose every month.
right,
Identify your goals, identify your outstanding amounts to all these financial institutions. Never be in debt to anyone. If you want to live a deep, slumbered sleep in night, you should not owe anyone. So once I, because of my corporate success, I was able to get some financial flexibility. The first thing that I did, and even today I teach my teenage son, is never owe anybody a penny. Only your financial accumulation begins once your debts are zero. I
That's
mean,
correct.
of course, there are good debts like buying a house on mortgage and stuff like that that I will not get into.
Property
But
and
young
everything.
people, you should not owe any money. So you work your tail off, take extra jobs, work part time, sell everything that you have, but get out of debt, and then your prosperity begins.
Excellent. With that note, thank you again, Sunil. This was quite inspiring, and I do not know, I've known you for a year, but we have never had such a conversation. So I'm feeling blessed and fortunate that I could get you on this show, and not just me. All the people who are watching this, they would immensely benefit from your life transformational story. And yeah, I'm going to do all possible to share this to as many people as possible, so that the message reaches out to them. Thank you again,
Thank
Sunil.
you, Ravi. Thank you for all that you're doing in the area of goal setting. Even if you can inspire a bunch of young people at the early stages of life, the importance of goal setting, like I shared, for the last 21 years, I've been setting goals. And if you need to know more about goal setting, subscribe to Ravi's channel and continue to get from world leaders who are doing extremely well in their professions, and borrow from their lessons, life's lessons, and see you on the other side of success. God bless.
Thank you, and bye bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.